Hello, everybody. Welcome to this post-draft edition of A Good Football Show. I am Patrick Daugherty, joined today by Denny Carter, Pat Kerrane, and Kyle Dvorchak. We're going to be breaking down the 2022 draft from every angle, including the early Dynasty League landscape, veterans, winners, and losers heading into this season, the redraft landscape, just the draft from every single angle. But first, just, wondering, it was a long weekend. I just wonder if you guys have your wits about you. Finally, I'm informed that at one point we may have joked about the Ninja Turtles dying of carbon monoxide poisoning, and just wondering where everyone's head's at right now.
Well, I almost died of carbon monoxide poisoning.
You did.
So
it was really funny. Like... We joked about it a lot.
Yeah.
Well, it
felt okay to joke about.
That was like 14 hours before Pat locked himself out of his house in the middle of, what was it, day 2? Right?
It was day 2, evening 2 of the draft. I locked myself out of my house.
I
made it back for my next pick.
Can you explain this? Because it was hectic. We're like, I got this guy. I'm up next. This guy's up. Like, can someone tell me something about this guy? And it just randomly you throw out, hey, while we're between picks, you guys should just know that I'm not in my house and I can't get back in the house.
How came upstairs earlier in the night. My 1-year-old daughter kept opening our garage door and going into the garage. So I locked it. And later, my family was outside just gallivanting about in the driveway, something you do in the Midwest. And I went outside just to say, hey, what's up? Yeah, I just posted a pic, just checking in on the fam. And I came back and it was one of those locks. This wasn't the deadbolt. It was like the lower lock where you can still open it from the inside, but it remains locked.
Oh, classic. That's a trap. That's a trap lock right there.
And I was like on my knees. First off, it's my wife, like, please, God, don't leave me. And then asking her, like, please, God, where's the spare key?
I thought
she
you
apparently had one in her
I thought you were locked out of your office. I didn't realize it was the house. God,
no, the entire home. And it was like 7:30 p.m., which was getting pretty close to bedtime.
How was it being outside for the first time in months? Was that fun? I know you were forced into it, but
well, I'm part of the big lawn lobby, so I mow my lawn once a week. I'm outside for 68 minutes a week, and that's it. And if I'm out for even 69 minutes, I get vitamin D poisoning. So I'm not allowed to be outside.
I do love, that's called a sunburn. I do love the idea of you just kicking the door down. I got a blurb.
we were
strange.
Our back porch. We don't have stairs to the yard yet. We want to do it eventually, guys. We want to have stairs on this back porch real bad. But we thought maybe we had left the back porch door unlocked, which would have required me like chivying and like climbing up a column. My wife asked, "Oh, is that door unlocked?" With the implication being I would climb up there. I'm like, I'm not really gonna die.
Right. That's something you do in college. You everyone locks themselves out because you're 21-year-old stupid people without developed brains, and you lock yourself out. And I have taken a ladder from a neighbor up to a window to get into a house.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, wasn't
was
willing
that
to go
a couple
that
months
far.
ago, or when was that, Cal?
It literally wasn't more than 2 years ago.
It was last semester, so it was November.
I could see Pat climbing into the window, open window up top, screaming about the Cardinals having drafted a special teamer, in the 5th round, and having to blurb that immediately.
Which special teamer? I feel like they probably drafted like 5 of them.
I think everybody drafted in the 5th and 6th round and 7th round are their special teamers.
I think the Cardinals traded their first round pick for a special teamer. Am I right? Marquise Brown, punt returner.
Jeez,
roasted.
God, that's rough.
Boom.
Dead air.
I mean, the Bears are who we should be roasting here. They literally drafted a special teamer in the 3rd round.
Don't get me started. I can't start my day on this kind of bad juju. Velus Jones.
Who literally, guys, he played, and listeners, you have to believe this. This is a thing I looked up. Velus Jones played in the 2nd Obama administration. Okay, and he's now a rookie in the NFL. That's an actual fact. I'm not making that up.
Well, so a lot of you might be listening to this show on May 2nd. Velus Jones, not a joke, turns 25 years old in 9 days.
It's one of the 2 cardinal sins I posted on drafting. Well, at least wide receivers, but this probably just applies to all players. You shouldn't draft players who I can see eye to eye with because I'm a very small human. You should not be in the NFL if you're my size. It's just a fact. I'm sorry. And you should also not draft players who are older than me because I'm getting older. We all age, but man, I am not that far removed from college. And I was a young college kid. So if you draft a receiver that I can see eye to eye with, he's going to get dominated by physical corners. And if you draft a receiver that's as old as I am or older than I am, he probably had a late breakout age. He's not going to be good.
Kerrane, do you think should a team You know, the NFL it's a league of trends. Like everyone zigs one direction, then you zag another. Should teams begin to disregard the age model and exclusively draft older players? You know, like I think the Eagles one time drafted a Canadian firefighter who was like 27. I can't remember that guy, that guard.
Brandon Whedon?
Anyone else remember this? The Eagles drafted like 1,000-year-old guard who was Canadian. I think he was literally a firefighter.
Wow.
I'm glad I don't have this knowledge. This makes me glad I didn't start with the Roto World sooner, because I don't know who you're talking about. But yeah, I mean, age does matter quite a bit at wide receiver. I will say that the height thing, Tyreek Hill was, I believe, 5'8". He was listed as a prospect anyway. So the height thing, I'm a little bit more willing to give teams the benefit of the doubt on, even in the third round. But the age thing, it's a pretty tough scene for the Bears there. Plus, just like not being a productive receiver when you had 6 years to do anything.
Yeah, that's right. It was Danny Watkins, by the way. He was a 27-year-old Canadian guard. The Eagles took in the first round in 2011.
No way. First round?
Yeah, it's legit. I thought Pat was doing like some sort of bit, or
not
remembering construing stories.
I thought you were going to
straight up. Yeah, 2011. He had already been drafted into the CFL, and he is currently a fireman at the Frisco Fire Department, which is a noble pursuit because those are very important people. So thank you. But no good on the Eagles for doing that, probably.
God, that is atrocious. I thought you were going to say like a 6th-round flyer, like a feel-good story. He's a firefighter. He's a big guy. He can block maybe. The first round.
Maybe. 20th. He's a guard. He better be able to block.
If he can block flyers, he can block a D tackle.
23rd overall pick. He made 24 career appearances. He was out of the league after 3 years. Danny Watkins. So
salute to the.
Well,
New
he
York
made it
Fire
longer than
Department,
LaVisca Chenault will. So
yeah, the New York Fire Department
literally saved my life this week. So we do appreciate our firefighters.
Really?
Yeah, it's not a joke. The carbon monoxide alarms were going off on the basement, the first floor, and the second floor, and I live on the first floor, so that means there's a lot of carbon monoxide in the apartment.
I thought this was a bit, so I apologize.
And also, as a
we made it a bit. We have made it a bit, but
every dumb thing anyone says in the show, everyone else is like, "You're joking, right? This is a bit." But like, we really do have a lot of dumb things like that.
No, there was a fire in the sewer. There's like currently a trench. There are construction workers like digging what I can only describe as a trench on my street right now as they try to get down to the sewer to figure out why there was flames coming from it earlier this week.
Yeah, New York sounds great though. It does really sound like a nice place.
It's great. Yeah, Brooklyn is a beautiful day. I mean, everything
you
is blooming.
have bodegas, and no one else has convenience.
No one has bodegas. That's why bodega, famously an English word, not derived from another language. It's the only place New York that has this.
I love the bodega discourse. It's great. You guys pay $6,000 a month for rent, but you have bodegas, so you're good.
Yeah, so you get it.
Kerrane, I just say the final word, like any red-blooded American, of course. An alarm's going off, and obviously you just ignore it. I mean, that's what you always do with the fire alarm.
Amen, brother.
Denny and I were in a 50th floor hotel bar where there was an actual fire. We found out later, and the alarm was just blaring, and no one moved an inch.
Yeah, the firefighters were a little bit. They were like, "So, did you hear the alarms?" We're like, "Yeah, but we were tired." They're like, "Yeah, when you hear the alarms, you leave because the alarms mean you might die." We're like, "That does sound."
That's just your opinion,
correct.
Sir.
Yeah,
it's just your opinion.
What are you, some sort of expert in fire?
Yeah. Come on, man. We're going to start from the top, Kerrane, and just get to the heart of the matter as it pertains to dynasty leagues. We're going to talk plenty of redraft this show, too. We're going to be kind of bobbing and weaving. But, Kerrane, I just want to ask you, who is the rookie 101 in a class loaded with receivers but really, really slim on running backs? Who do you think should be the first pick off the board in dynasty rookie drafts?
I think in most leagues, this includes Superflex leagues, in most leagues, for most teams, it should be Breece Hall. However, I don't have any issues not taking Breece Hall. I have the 101 in a league where I may not take him. I have the 101 in a couple leagues where I may not take him.
Strange.
But strange. Dynasty league expert with a host of 101s. Very interesting.
Oh, you either want the one you want to win or you want the 101.
That's a good point.
No middle. But I'm in spots where Breece Hall makes sense. I'm in spots where maybe you want to play a little bit more for the future. And I think Treylon Burks is an excellent prospect. He's my wide receiver one. People love Drake London as well. I get that. I don't have any issues if people want to take Drake London at the 101. If you're a huge Garrett Wilson guy and you're just like, I'm not leaving this draft out Garrett Wilson, I wouldn't be mad. It wouldn't tilt me to see someone take Garrett Wilson 101. Kenny Pickett is the guy that might tilt me a little bit. I don't really see Kenny Pickett is like a great 101 selection.
So even in a super flex, you wouldn't consider Kenny Pickett with the 101?
I wouldn't. But it also wouldn't tilt me because he could be kind of like a Ryan Tannehill level producer, and he's going to have job security. So, if you think about like kind of what Tannehill was going for, like let's say 2 years ago in superflex leagues, you could get a wide receiver or even a running back probably at a similar skill level to the guys you'd be taking over Pickett. So, I don't know. I don't hate it. I think this is a pretty bad year to have the 101 ultimately. And if you can trade off of it, like if I could trade from the 101 to the 103, I'm probably looking to do that in a lot of cases.
So as Kerrane just laid out, it's kind of context dependent who the 101 should be, depending on your league specs, just your team needs. But Kyle, I'll ask you this too, Denny. But so Kyle, do you have just in a vacuum? Do you agree with Kerrane that there's just no obvious, with Breece Hall being the most obvious, that there's no obvious, or is there someone like if you have the 101, you're like, I'm sorry, like I got to go out and get this guy at the 101?
I'd say I'm marginally more confident in Breece Hall just because of how incredible of a profile he had and how valuable these like young rookie running backs who come in and get incredible workloads, even if they don't do a ton. Like Najee Harris is one of the most valuable dynasty backs instantly. He wasn't incredible as a rookie. He wasn't going out and doing incredible things. He didn't look great when you watched him because his team was not very good. But just the workload we saw, immediately you said, oh, Najee Harris is like a top 5 dynasty back. And the room for growth was there because his team was bad and he just needs a better team around him. I think Breece Hall fits that same profile. So I'd say I'm marginally more confident in Breece Hall. But he does have a good pass catching back in Michael Carter behind him. I don't think it's a massive impediment, but it's a concern. It's not like Najee Harris walked in like with nobody on that team. Breece Hall has more competition, and it might be a season, half a season before we see him be like a truly elite pass catcher, which I think he can be, but it might be some time before we see that, where we saw it with Najee early. So I would say I'm not as confident as I was last year. Najee wasn't my favorite prospect, but it was obvious. Fit was there, role was there, pass catching was there. You take all that. I think Breece Hall is 80% of that, and that makes him confidently the 101 for me, but that's kind of what Kerrane said. In most situations, you take the 101. If for some reason you were stacked at running back and you wanted to take what I would say is a better overall prospect, I think Treylon Burks is a really good prospect. If you wanted to do that and just bet on talent, and wide receivers who probably are going to last longer in the modern NFL than running backs, I could get it. I would say 80+% of the time you should be taking Breece Hall. And even Superflex, like Kenny Pickett, like congrats on getting Kirk Cousins, Ryan Tannehill for a decade, but that's, to me, that's the upside almost, right? And like, you can honestly kind of just find those guys, not on the waiver wire, but you can find those guys in the middle rounds. You can find those guys like, Mac Jones. Mac Jones shouldn't have gone the 101, even though he did set up for a promising NFL career, and that has proven true. I'm not afraid of the team that took Mac Jones. Like, I would say most of the time you should take Breece Hall. Treylon Burks is sort of an outside consideration, but I get it because he's really good.
Denny, you've never not won a championship, so you've never had the 101. But if you had the 101, what is your lean?
Yeah, if I was a loser and I had the 101, I would take Treylon Burks. I mean, for the long haul, this year, like the raw volume and the Tennessee offense probably will be an issue for him at times, like it was for AJ Brown, even though AJ Brown was very efficient when he was healthy in that Titans offense. But I mean, the production profile, I mean, Kerrane wrote so much about how everything popped, the intermediate game, efficient on deep targets. He destroyed single coverage in college. Was a target dominator, unlike almost any prospect we've seen in recent years. And you put him in an offense that has almost no target competition. Robert Woods, okay, 30 years old, coming off the knee thing. Like I'm not.
I legit forgot he was on the Titans.
Yeah, I'm not too. I actually saw some tweets, some unfortunate tweets the other day that said, "Well, I guess Robert Woods is the Titans wide receiver 1 now." And I thought, excuse me, like, is there something I'm not understanding about Treylon Burks? That
You'd have been better off saying Des Fitzpatrick was this team.
Yeah, right. Right. I mean, Robert Woods, probably a great guy, an excellent blocker, and also a guy who can like take some handoffs, I guess, and do some reverse.
Oh, he actually is pretty good. This could be, it actually could be a real problem for Treylon.
I don't know. I think
he'll be fine.
I think Burks is set up. I feel like set up for the long term and in the post Derrick Henry future, whenever that may be.
2042.
Right. I think Burks is his upside is just tremendous. I love him.
I'll just say this as my quick opinion on the matter. The two people I want the most, like just not even thinking about needs, blah, 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 league specs, are Treylon Burks and Jameson Williams. And if I had the 101, like I'm sure I would like consider Breece Hall for a long time, because of course you have to consider the best running back. But man, I would just have a hard time probably not taking Treylon Burks. And Kerrane, just to close this conversation, I mean, would Jameson Williams be an absurd consideration at 101? Or like if he's like who your heart desires, would that be defensible or no?
I think it'd be defensible if he hadn't torn his ACL. It's just so hard because like you have to think about, I mean, I guess like know yourself a little bit, because Jameson Williams, I would be shocked if he's worth the 101. Like if you, let's say in November, you're able to figure out the worst team in the league, the guy who's likely to have the Superflex 101, and then you try to take Jameson Williams and offer him for his 2023 first, you're getting laughed at. Because by that point, Jameson Williams is probably like he might have just come off the pup or something. He's unlikely to hit the ground running as Jared Goff's deep threat coming off an ACL that he tore in January. It's just not going to be awesome as we're sitting here in the fall. That's not to say he can't be an incredible wide receiver, but he is, he weighed 179 pounds of the combine. Maybe he's going to play once he fully recovers from the ACL. Maybe he's more like a mid 180s guy, but he's not like the archetype necessarily of a future like fantasy football year in, year out wide receiver one. I think he could certainly be awesome, but we need the Lions to figure out the quarterback. Like they don't have a guy right now who's set up to maximize the skill set of a Jameson Williams. So I think trade down. If you want Jameson Williams, I think he's a great prospect. But I think in most leagues, you'll see Hall, you'll see Treylon Burks, you'll see Drake London, you'll see Garrett Wilson, and you'll probably see Kenneth Walker come off the board before Jameson Williams. So you could pretty easily trade down to the 104, 105, or 106, still have a really good chance of getting him. And I would say one thing to consider just in this conversation is how liquid is your trade market in your league. Because if you're going to take Breece Hall, I think you really do want the trade market to be fairly liquid, because the point about Najee Harris is a really good one. Najee Harris worth a ton. Javonte Williams worth a ton right now. But is that actually helpful? Like, are you able to move those guys? Because if I had Najee Harris, I would love to trade him right now. Like you've gotten a profit. I didn't really like what I saw as a rookie. Everything about kind of what I was worried in terms of the big plays, it kind of all was I think he is who we thought he was, which isn't, in my opinion, excellent news. So if you're able to take Najee, you're able to move Najee. You could do the same with Breece if you don't love what you see as a rookie. But 2 years from now, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, J.K. Dobbins, like things can get pretty ugly for running backs after they've played 2 years in the league. So if you're thinking a bit more long term and it's a league that doesn't tend to have a lot of trades, then that's another thing that might push me towards taking Burks or London or even Wilson.
Just a bunch of great points there, and just really great point with Jameson Williams that it's just going to be a slower burn with the injury. And of course, we almost didn't mention Jared Goff at first. We got him in there then, but even if you think he's a truly special player, you do have to accept that it's probably going to be a slow burn. And it's also, too, that his path to success, you made the point, he's going to have to be a mold breaker, like the guy he's most often compared to, Tyreek Hill. Like I think we all agree, like his upside is stratospheric. But with those guys, we always tend to focus on the stratospheric upside and maybe not the concerning floor.
Tyreek, this is something I forget sometimes. Tyreek had a lot of success with Alex Smith. It didn't just come with Patrick Mahomes. It didn't come out of nowhere. Like,
true, if you're a special player, you're a special player.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
It can happen.
That's true.
There's a chance that he's a special player. So we will get to more Dynasty League talk in a bit. But first, Denny, I want to ask you, we understandably spent the weekend obsessing over the new rookie fits, but who do you think the biggest veteran winner is coming out of the 262 picks of the draft? Like, who survived like a challenge, quote unquote? Someone we thought might be in trouble after draft weekend, but is coming out looking pretty good.
Well, Michael Pittman got zero, a target challenge, in the draft. I mean, he comes out of it, I think, looking like the alpha type that we thought he could be in that offense with an upgrade at quarterback. He comes to mind. I know there was a lot of talk about among Colts beat writers saying, they should go in on a receiver, trade up, invest in someone who could be on the other side of Michael Pittman for, not just this year, but going forward, to make that duo. It didn't happen. I think that, just volume wise, that should be really great for him.
Although they didn't get zero competition. I mean, they did add Alec Pierce, right? Correct.
Well,
but
correct.
He's a downfield guy. He's going to be kind of it's a high ADOT guy, which is not a great fit with Matt Ryan. But
I think it's better for Pittman that they added Pierce than if they had added no one, because Pierce is like a competent, capable deep threat. I think he's going to. Like, you can't just ignore Alec Pierce if he's run and go routes. You got to cover that. He's very athletic, and that's what he did in college. So that's great. Michael Pittman was best as an intermediate target. I think sometimes we think of him as kind of a deep threat,
right?
But he's probably best if his ADOT's around 10, 11, getting kind of more intermediate targets, and Alec Pierce should help stretch the field and make those easier for Pittman to get open on.
Yeah, I think sometimes we see guys drafted and we say, like, oh no, this means that this guy's going to be drawing a certain number of targets, going to take away from my guy, from the guy I wanted to have, no competition. And that's a good point. And if you can upgrade on T.Y. Hilton, who has been contemplating retirement for 3 years, then I think you do it. And I think they did. And I think that they, like Kerrane said, it could be really good for getting Pittman into favorable situations.
Yeah, it's a really great point about you want a target equilibrium where you never want too much, but you don't want too little target competition. Otherwise, you're TJ Hawkinson in 2021, where like a team can just roll all of its coverage your way, and you're just kind of screwed. So yeah, that's always a good point to keep in mind. Kyle, who was a veteran winner in your opinion?
I have James Conner. I know you guys don't like James Conner. We're talking about this in Slack. You guys think?
Well, we joked about Kyle is too young to remember that James Conner is actually bad.
Last year,
Kerrane, are you on Team James Conner?
Had a battle. Yeah, I was Team James Conner. I'm totally.
That was last year before you saw him play really well with the Cardinals. I get it. If you want to say he's injury prone, like
I'd already seen it in my mind.
All right, I'm gonna head out. Kerrane has already. I get it. If you want to say he's injury prone, I can't fully push back against that. That does seem to appear to be a roughly correct argument, even if we concede that like injuries are somewhat fluky. I don't care about that, right? Like when he goes down, you're just picking some scrub off the waiver wire. Dearness Johnson randomly getting 22 carries. We want big, valuable weeks from our running backs, and he won't be that expensive, and he has no competition. And we saw him last year when he had no competition. Chase Edmonds was just incredible. In his final 7 games, he missed 2 of them, I believe, but in his final 7 games that he played, he posted a 32, 341, and 3 receiving line. And it wasn't just like they were dumping him off. They actually lined him up like in the slot out wide just a little bit, and you saw him looking really good as a pass catcher. And the worry was that they weren't going to believe he could hold up. They would add basically just Chase Edmonds 2.0, and then he becomes that early down grind that we saw for like 8 or so weeks. Touchdowns, nice. But no, he has the peak of valuable touches. He is a big banger who can put into the end zone, get you those sweet touchdowns. And he's really nice as a pass catcher. We saw that last year, and we knew that coming out of college. We saw it again in Pittsburgh. Yeah. He has been nothing but a really solid, not great. He's not Christian McCaffrey, but he is a capable plus pass catcher. And we saw them use him that way that last year. If he just does that again, even if they give some carries to another running back, touchdowns plus targets, like that is just money for fantasy.
The only thing that I'm not sure about there, Kyle's, is he won't be expensive part. Where do you think the ADP settles in? Because it feels like I wouldn't be shocked if he was like the 207 or something.
Wow.
Oh, really? I was thinking like 4, 5, 6, somewhere in the like the David Montgomery. I think people think.
I think the projections are gonna be. They're gonna like him.
The projections liked a player like David Montgomery last year, though, because you couldn't give anyone else in that backfield anything. They had no one. Like Tariq Cohen wasn't going to start the year playing, and I don't think he played at all, in fact. And it was like the old Chiefs back, right? So I think they view him I think people will view him maybe like a plus version of David Montgomery. But like if you took David Montgomery's role in an offense that wasn't atrocious, he should have been like a 2nd or 3rd round pick, but people think he's bad or whatever. So maybe David Montgomery plus, because Montgomery was like 5th round, I think, if I remember correctly, right? So maybe
hold on, I think it was a little higher than that.
Yeah, it was higher than that.
He's taking the exception because he's
Well, I was part of DMont Nation. I didn't really want to be, but he was a guy. mean, every year David Montgomery is like the classic guy, like, well, the ADP doesn't really match the potential workload, seeing as he's going to get basically every touch, but no one wants to take him. I don't think it was quite as low as I have no idea why we're litigating David Montgomery's 2020.
Either way, though, I do think I'd be kind of shocked if he goes.
He feels like a 2-3 turn guy to me. That's where I think he'll settle in.
Yeah,
I would even guess a little later. I would say
I could actually see him falling more to the 4th because
I like
Kerrane 2-3 the turn that sounds like real, like on its face. But James Conner is just even when the projections look great, he's gonna be the classic. Like in your head, you're like, I'm just gonna let someone else take James Conner. Like, screw this.
All right.
I don't like
that.
I mean, if he falls to the 4th, I'm all over James Conner. The Cardinals' backfield with Kyler Murray back there produces a lot of expected points for running backs and has for a couple of years now. I feel like it's a little bit like a Fournette situation. Like even if we went into last year thinking, okay, well, Fournette's nothing special. So, like, of course, Gio Bernard's going to eat into his role. Of course, Ronald Jones is going to eat into it. And then he comes out and is probably one of the most valuable players in fantasy. It's the same thing with James Conner where, like, nothing jumps off the page except for my film take on James Conner is he looked he had a little more juice last year than I remember him having. Maybe he lost some weight. I don't know.
He was just healthier for a while.
He was banged up. Yeah, he was banged up the year before.
Yeah, and I found him very impressive. I would be very happy to take him in the 4th round in 12-team leagues.
Yeah, last ADP I could find on James Conner or on David Montgomery from last year was 3-4 turn, like almost on the dot at 3-4 turn. And I think people are going to think like they kind of are similar in a way, but I think James Conner is better. And he plays. The thing is, he also plays on offense that is better.
If Kyle, if you're in, if Denny's in, and if I'm in, he's not going in the 4th. Like we're the guys who are supposed to be like, you can't take him there. You can't take him. If we're in, he's going earlier.
Really, really good point.
Yeah, if we're in, like we're the guys who would be like laugh and you're
the market
noses up at a running back in the 3rd, 4th round.
We're the guys who get skittish about taking running back. So we're
the guys who give people permission to take James Conner. There's like probably like an average Joe out there who like loves James Conner, but thinks like the experts, quote unquote, will like humiliate him and laugh at him and scold him and like get his wife to leave him if he takes James Conner. But you're all saying take James Conner. So it's like, well, my wife is going to stay with me if I take James Conner.
I mean, look, if you take James Conner in the 2nd, I may come to your house and laugh at you. But the 4th is different.
Kerrane, do any other veteran winners come to mind as we wrap up this conversation?
I mean, Darnell Mooney, my God, like it's going to be hard to not project him for a lot of targets. I don't know what the Bears are doing. I mean, the Justin Fields we'll have to get to on the losers.
I mean, I know what the Bears are doing. I'll say with Justin Fields is I think it just reeks of a new brain trust, not thinking Justin Fields is the long-term answer. So they're not investing in Justin Fields. And it's kind of the classic, like if he overcomes these awful circumstances, then great. We were wrong. He's awesome. Then we'll build around Justin Fields. But
they're giving their 1st round pick to Davis Mills treatment, which is good and smart. And I like it. You should do that.
I think it's one of the worst team building decisions I've ever seen.
I'm not saying it's smart. Atrocious. To me, it's like clearly what they're doing, that they don't believe in Justin Fields. And they're like, well, if this dude is good enough to overcome this crap we're giving him this year, then great.
But so what if they don't believe in Justin Fields? Because if you don't believe in Justin Fields, you need to get your roster ready for a new quarterback. So you should be drafting receivers and trying to build up the offense around this guy for the future that you're eventually going to have. And also, like, wouldn't it be nice to be able to trade Justin Fields? Why do you want to expose Justin Fields and make him look as bad as humanly possible? Like, just get the offense in a place where a quarterback can come in and have success. It seems like they're sabotaging Justin Fields. I mean, it's really strange. Like what the Jets are doing makes so much more sense to me. You're going to figure out if Zach Wilson stinks. If he stinks, it's him. It's not the offense. You can move on. And the next guy's going to come in and he's going to have 2 awesome wide receivers in Elijah Moore and Garrett Wilson. He's going to hit the ground running. He's going to have a competent tight end in Rucker. I think the Jets are running circles around the Bears right now.
Oh, yeah. Like sabotaging Justin Fields like the perfect way to put it. And it's exactly what they did last year. They didn't even develop an offense that was meant for Justin Fields because they thought Andy Dalton would start 17 games or something. And they're doing it again this year, even though it's a new regime. So the ghosts of the old regime are still like hanging large over this team. So I agree with Pat. Daugherty, sorry. That I think they are just like well, if he succeeds despite us not trying to let him succeed, then we know he's the answer. But that's not smart. And I don't think Daugherty would ever say that that's smart. But that is very much kind of the vibes I get. And like I said, it's what they're doing with it's what you do with Gardner Minshew or Davis Mills, where I don't think he's the answer, but if he really does succeed, we give him another chance. We give him another chance. You don't do that with Justin
Don't
Fields.
do it to anybody.
No,
that's true. Why do that to any human being? We're all in this together.
Are we? I don't know. The Bears really would disagree with that.
I've seen this argument from Bears fans who are, inexplicably defending their draft, which was atrocious.
Bears fans defended the last regime too, so I'm not,
right. When do they, get the idea here that the ownership hires bad people, not bad people,
No, you mean it.
No, it's fair to say, they're sabotaging a perfectly nice,
not good humans.
And so, but I've seen this argument several times now that wait a second, they love Justin Fields. Justin Fields consulted and was in on these draft picks. Well, that's an indictment on Justin Fields. That doesn't make anybody look good.
What if the reason they took the 25-year-old receiver is just because he really liked him?
He looks don't say if it's true that he was in on it. Don't say it. You can't admit that publicly because it makes Justin Fields look even worse than he did.
I mean, he wasn't in on it. They probably gave him like mug shots of a bunch of defensive guys, and we're like, which one?
And the thing is, we talk about they had a horrible abrupt talent at receiver, and they take essentially a kick returner and Velus Jones in the third round. But the offensive line was really bad last year, and I know the defense also needed improvements. But the thing is, when you have a quarterback you have already invested so much in and has so much potential talent, you kind of have to let the defense go by the wayside to find out if said quarterback is the right quarterback for you for the next 5-10 years. And so they take cornerback, safety, kick returner, and finally in the fifth round, a fifth round tackle is almost nothing. Might not even make the roster. So the line remains terrible. The receiving core remains terrible. And that all comes off of a free agency period where they also did nothing. The rumors that they didn't believe in Justin Fields didn't start in the draft. They started when they traded away Khalil Mack, when they didn't make any big free agent signings. They spent the whole offseason as if they're just giving up already, waiting for 2023.
I would think it's safe to say it's not rumors. They don't believe in Justin Fields because the actions do just speak louder than words.
Yeah, they clearly don't.
And I'll say too, one more thing, but Kerrane, I think one more defense they'll put out is that this roster was so bad. I mean, for years and years and years, the old regime quite literally would have 4 or 5 draft picks. They didn't even have, this roster was to the point where it didn't even have enough NFL level guy. They quite literally every year would be down to 4 or 5 draft picks after all the trades they would make. And so they probably just view this as a really painful, we got to refill the coffers here with some NFL talent, and not saying it's right to neglect your second year top 10 quarterback. But I do think that is what's happening.
But I mean, the offensive line point Kyle was making is such a good one. We've seen guys, better quarterback prospects than Justin Fields, at least in the NFL's eyes, fail because they couldn't be protected. We saw Trevor Lawrence struggle as a rookie in a really bad situation. And, he was considered this incredible rookie quarterback prospect. So it's the thing about setting another quarterback up for success, I really believe that. It really doesn't matter if you believe in Justin Fields. Either you need to help this quarterback you believe in succeed, or you don't believe in him and you need to figure it out at quarterback, meaning you're going to have a good situation for another quarterback. So it just really doesn't matter.
No, and we just saw a team that did this Justin Fields approach the last time they had a franchise quarterback, the Jets and Sam Darnold, and it scarred them for life. And now they're doing the exact opposite with Zach Wilson.
Yep. As
you hinted at, when you draft a top 10 quarterback, maybe you should want them to succeed.
Yeah, it's how the Bills treated Josh Allen too. They kept spending on their offensive line, both in the draft and in free agency. Then they traded for Stephon Diggs, and we're like, oh wow, how's that work? I don't know if Stephon Diggs a good match for Josh Allen, but whether or not that was true, they gave him every chance he needed to succeed, and it worked. And the thing is, had it not worked and had Josh Allen still been bad, if they were smart, they draft a quarterback the year after Josh Allen completely flames out, and then he is set up for success taking over that role. But either way, you have a quarterback who is either good now and you ramp up and you go, or you are 1 to 2 years away from inserting the quarterback into a great spot, which is why I think the Lions kind of had a really good draft, right? Because they have spent really 1 or 2 years building up a team that has a really good offensive line. They're finally getting some good receivers, and their defense is terrible, but they're at least trying to make the defense better. In a year or two, if the Lions are a 500 plus team and the Bears are still terrible, I kind of think that's more likely than the other way around.
another thing about the situation is like a quarterback could become available, right? Like Lamar Jackson has not signed a long-term deal. What if he hits the free agent market and you've got this incredible situation?
Yeah.
You know, the Jets could be like, we have all the receivers you could possibly want. We're bringing in Lamar. Like, you set yourself up for, you know, a quarterback to want to go to your team, which the Bears, I mean, who in the right mind would be like, I'm going to the Bears?
Yeah, we saw that with the Broncos even, where like they were kind of treading water, but they had the offensive infrastructure in place.
Yep.
Can we talk about Zach Wilson for a second? Is it? Were you going to get to that, Pat? Or
no, I don't know. You can talk. No one's. I mean, it's this. I'm told we're a country of free speech and of laws and a constitution. Yeah. So if you want to talk about Zach,
listen. Now that you were told that by a star NFL receiver on Twitter,
yeah, I was. That's a good point. Yeah.
now that the speech is free, I want to say that the only time the Jets were even remotely successful last year was when they were, you know, for lack of a better term, hyper conservative on offense and hiding Zach Wilson at every point, right? I'm not saying that there's no room for growth. Okay, obviously there is room for growth. Hopefully for Jets fans and for these two great young wide receivers, he can get better during the offseason and maybe be less bad in 2022. But the team seemed last year offensively very focused on hiding him, on making sure they weren't throwing when they didn't have to throw. And so I'm wondering, like, are they going to embrace that, or are they just going to have these two, you know, really good, an amazing duo of receivers just doing not much in an offense that will be designed to win 17-14 rather than actually trying to score points? I don't know.
I think that's what it's going to be. Denny.
I'm skeptical.
I think they're going for 17 points. I do. I mean,
it's called the Brian Flores approach. No offense to Brian,
but I mean, I don't know. Zach Wilson was so bad last year that, like, maybe in a couple years we get to a point where he's actually able to support like 1.5 fantasy options. But I think for now, just also what we know about, you know, that Shanahan tree offense is that they're usually quite fine playing for 17-14 wins.
Changing gears, Kyle, who do you think is the biggest veteran loser coming out of draft week? I wish there was a less harsh word than loser there, but which veteran saw their fantasy value dinged the most over draft week, and someone we might have liked going in, but we have to reassess going forward?
Yeah, I mean, Justin Fields.
But say besides Justin Fields.
Yeah. But that's the thing is we and it's like it deserves its own conversation how they're treating. Because it's not just Justin Fields as a fantasy loser. It's an organization that doesn't really know what they're doing at all. And so we'll move past them as an organization. Josh Jacobs, we saw them not pick up his 5th-year option. Not awfully surprising. Actually, it kind of stems from another organization that has now changed over hands, as the Bears did, but they don't seem to be acting like it. But has now changed over hands. All of these first-round picks they had from like the Mack and Amari Cooper trades, not getting their 5th-year options picked up. Josh Jacobs is like a year away from being how we view like Chris Carson right now, who also is a loser of the draft. But I just think at this point we saw a decent amount of him improving as a pass catcher last year, but the team didn't really seem to care too much. They draft Zamir White in the 4th round, and then strangely they go back to it and take UCLA's Britton Brown in the 7th round. They also will be getting Kenyon Drake back, who's banged up all of last year. I really think we were kind of fortunate to see Josh Jacobs used as a pass catcher last year. We'll see less of that this year, less of his dominance of the carries this year. He'll be a free agent. So if you have him in Dynasty, like, you get one more year of RB 26 numbers. And at that point, like, he could be one of these running backs who's waiting until the summer for free agency. He has no market for him. And we're thinking, well, like, where's he going? Is he going to be a backup? Maybe he's a starter. I don't think he's a starter. So I think we're a year away. And it's a shame because I think Josh Jacobs is like a pretty solid back. But the way the Raiders are using him and the way they're using their capital tells me they have zero faith in him. And when one team has zero faith in him, it does seem to cascade towards other teams, especially the running back position, which we see less and less free agency investment in. Like we're probably a year away from him being a backup plus, a 1B maybe.
Kerrane, who is another veteran or just second-year player who saw their fantasy value really dinged over draft weekend?
I mean, Michael Carter, you know, that's one of the biggest ones.
That's the lead.
Yeah, he's I think it's really unfortunate because he played really well last year. He showed more than I thought he would. and this is a huge deal. He's not going to like come out of this okay.
We sound like we're talking about like a personal friend who died. But
yeah, this sounds like a terminal illness. He acquired some Breece Hall in his lungs or something.
Well, Denny, you had the tweet of the way to get good at a game is to do it until you don't enjoy it anymore. And this, I guess it's a little similar. I'm actually like grieving about this.
It's true.
It does remind me of Gio Bernard when they drafted Jeremy Hill, but this is like a much better version of Jeremy Hill. And Gio Bernard for the Kyles of the world was quite a surprisingly good rookie running back. He was kind of seen as someone who'd probably be like, I mean, he's very similar to Michael Carter, like a pass catching specialist. And then he was like the running back his rookie year. They bring in this 2-down guy in Jeremy Hill, and Gio basically morphs into the Gio that we're now familiar with. But I think Carter is probably morphing into that type of player, but he's now behind a guy who profiles as quite capable as a receiver. I actually don't, this isn't great for Breece Hall either, because if you look at his yards per route run and stuff, he's kind of more in the Cam Akers like mold of a guy who we expect to be just fine as a receiver, but not someone that they like need to have on the field as a receiver. So I would not be shocked if Breece Hall ultimately becomes like a 2-down guy. Josh Jacobs was supposed to be like a receiving specialist, if anything, and he ends up getting used as like a 2-down workhorse type guy. So this would not be even close to like the weirdest usage that we've seen from a team if they kind of use Hall as mostly a 2-down guy and they continue to use Carter as a receiver. But Carter's, he's in a tough spot.
Denny, who is a veteran who saw their fantasy value grievously injured over draft weekend?
I don't know about grievously, but like it wasn't great for Antonio Gibson for Washington to, spend, not insignificant draft capital on, Robinson at Alabama. Like it's just this constant messaging from the franchise that like we don't see Antonio Gibson the way that you fantasy football people see Antonio Gibson. And that's unfortunate because it sure seems like Antonio Gibson could be a dominant every down back in the NFL. I'm not sure if that's going to happen as long as he's with the Commanders, as we call them. So yeah, it's not that this draft pick means that and you have to like slash Antonio Gibson's projections across the board. But it's a ding. It's a ding. It's enough. It's enough.
More than a ding, I think.
It could be worse though. It could be Brian Robinson's like.
No, I don't think it's a massive thing. Wait, Pat.
But Denny, I'm going to cut you off there, Denny. Where you made a really good point. Where it's not just this pick; it's just like the whole environment around Antonio Gibson, and it's not a nothing pick either. I mean, you can debate the player like Kerrane did, but it was a 3rd-round pick. They get a second chance at J.D. McKissick, and they didn't pass it up. They bring back J.D. McKissick, and that is coupled with the fact that he was playing hurt, of course, but he didn't have a good year in 2021, Antonio Gibson, where I think it's like with Gibson at this point, we kind of have to believe what our eyes are telling us, where he wasn't good last year. The team does not seem to believe in him at all, let alone as a 3-down back, even as like the only early down back. They just seem like they view him more as like a strict part of a committee. And they're like, that ceiling that was so easily like projected because, he's a pass catcher who's also a running back. Like, I just think that's gone. And we kind of have to we have to adjust on Antonio Gibson.
Yeah, this is something that Josh Norris, don't know what happened to him. I think he probably just retired or something, but would tell us that teams give us very few chances to tell us what they believe, right? They can spend the whole offseason coach talking, leaking rumors, but then they have games and then their money and their draft capital to tell us what they believe about their players, their team, and how they view football. And they spent all of last year with Antonio Gibson banged up, never throwing him the ball, despite he literally played wide receiver in college. Yes. So they don't think he is a good pass catcher, or at least they don't want to use him in that way. Maybe it's just a touch load thing. They spent all of the past, since he's entered the NFL, making him a committee back. Then they give him someone after he's banged up last year to maybe take off some of the between the tackles work. They have told us very clearly, with no exceptions, they don't think he's a 3-down back, and maybe they don't even think he is a full-on 1-2 down back. Maybe they think he splits 1-2 downs. So I love Antonio Gibson, and I'm right. I'll never be wrong about Antonio Gibson being a Christian McCaffrey level player.
Right.
But Washington really does not think that, and they're the ones who get to give him their touches.
I think we have to take an oath here right now saying that we will not blurb anything that comes out of Washington this summer that says we see Gibson as a CMC type back. We refuse to blurb it because
we can't do it.
One blurb moved his ADP like 12 to 13 picks in the first 3 rounds.
Well, because but basically it can't be true. Like it literally, like you can't
That's the
match
thing, folks. We're mere vessels, and if they say it, we have to post it.
Oh my!
But then we attach our analysis, and we're like, we're not believing it this year. We're not touching the stove, no matter what you say.
All right. But we have to make the headline as snarky as possible.
Yeah, it's true. Very good. That's a good negotiated settlement right there on our summer Antonio Gibson.
You guys don't even need the lawyers. Look at that.
Denny's got really good lawyers where he can just do it himself now.
They're right here. You can't see. They're off camera.
They're whispering in your ear.
Yeah.
We will be right back. Just a reminder, if you don't have the NBC Sports Predictor app powered by PointsBet, go download it now. The contests are free and easy to play, and you have a shot to win thousands by predicting what will happen in the NBA playoffs, the Premier League, or the PGA Tour and NASCAR circuit. Kerrane, who is the most dangerous rookie in this class? Like the day 2 or 3 pick that we might follow too far down the rabbit hole, like a guy where we overlook like obvious red flags, like say they're a 4th round pick, or say they weren't productive in college, but we like love everything else about them. Who do you think is like a rookie from this class that we're primed to like overhype ourselves on?
I think the way this class is structured is that you have depth at the wide receiver position and the running back position is a bit weak. So once you get past Breece Hall and Kenneth Walker, you're at risk of getting overly excited about basically whoever you say next. I'm already overly excited about Rachaad White. So he's certainly someone that, could be that guy, only a 3rd round pick. But I also think Dameon Pierce comes to mind as someone who, hits a depth chart where there's going to be opportunity.
4th rounder for the Texans.
4th rounder for the Texans. He was a committee back. He didn't really do that much in terms of like even his per touch stuff isn't ideal. He scored a lot of touchdowns though, but it was a high scoring team. And I think he's fine. Like, but the tape is like pretty strong on him. Like people get excited about kind of the way, he like runs through guys and stuff. He's going to be fun, but he's like the exact type of guy that worries me when he starts to get more expensive. And I think he will. Tyler Algier is a guy that I really liked before the draft. He now hits the Atlanta depth chart. It's going to be very easy to start talking yourself into him as like their lead running back. I probably will be doing that to myself, but that's another type of situation where you want to just try to keep it cheap on these running backs. There's no running back outside of the top 2. Rachaad White's pretty great. So I kind of include him in that, like, he's like in the little tier of his own, but really after that, there's really no one like statistically who pops. And it's really just kind of about, situation and stuff.
It's really good that we turn the conversation about, guys may want to temper expectations on guys who are high risk. And it ends with Kerrane being like, this one guy, though, let's all agree to make an exception, which I also like will have to rein myself in because it's a great profile and fit for the Bucs. But it will get expensive. If not could get expensive, it will. It's the same thing we talked about with James Conner when all of the, running back poo-poo losers are saying, this one running back though is the exception. He's going to get expensive.
Are you talking about Dynasty?
I'm talking more Dynasty, but
okay. Yep. Okay.
I think if Rachaad White goes in like the 110 range or something, that's fine. If it starts to get up above that, I think it's a bit much. But the other guys, he at least was a day 2 pick. The other guy, and James Cook, you could argue for as well, who was a round 2 pick. But if you're looking at like Isaiah Spiller, he would be another guy that I think people might get a bit too hyped on. Tyler Algier, Pierre Strong, Dameon Pierce, like all those guys, they're day 3 picks. So, I think like 2nd round rookie picks is what we want to be spending on that type of guy.
On the other side, who do you think, I'll leave this one open to anyone. Who do you think is someone where we might focus too much on the perceived red flags and like maybe ignore what is really solid real life draft capital? Like say someone with Kadarius Toney last year, well, you could argue how that turned out, but someone that no one wanted at all in Dynasty. Like he felt like the 2nd round in some rookie drafts because just of where he ended up, his kind of like weird profile where he wasn't a college receiver even that long. Who do we think is someone that we might focus. Like, are we gonna like Denny? I'll just ask you with Washington. Are we gonna like focus on the negatives with Jahan Dotson? And we don't like the quarterback. The team is always poorly run. Like Terry McLaurin's already there, and an alpha. Like, or do you see any positive arguments to be made for John? Who do you think is someone we might get too negative on instead of like ignoring some pretty clear positives?
Right. I mean, Dotson came to mind because he was summarily dismissed as like a terrible pick, an overreach, going to a bad offense with, like you said, McLaurin in this wide receiver 1 role. But really, if Washington can throw a little more this year, and remember last year their most success came when they absolutely grounded the passing attack. Okay. And they gave Antonio Gibson the ball like 30 times a game, no matter what. Right. And they were winning 14-12 and whatnot. So, but you can't, that's not sustainable, and you can't do that. You can't rely on that. That can't be your long-term plan, even for the Commanders. So, in a scenario where they use Wentz as, I believe a pretty significant upgrade at quarterback. I know he's bad, but Taylor Heineke had no business starting in the NFL.
No, he didn't. He was a meme.
Okay, so Heineke was worse, way worse probably than Wentz. If they can pass a little more, if Dotson can take that every down role on the other side of McLaurin, where defense is shading over to McLaurin, making sure he doesn't burn them deep, Dotson should have some decent opportunity. I could paint a somewhat positive picture for Dotson.
Kerrane, do anyone else come to mind on someone where we might like harp on the negatives and just let fall way too far in rookie drafts?
Wan'Dale Robinson. I think
he's the one who came to mind when I asked this question. He was. I was
going to ask you, Kerrane, to do the Wan'Dale Robinson speech because I'm torn on him. A lot of good and a lot of struggling to understand it. So I was literally going to pitch this to you, lob this softball to you.
I would also say I think Dotson is very much this type of guy too. But Robinson, I think, is even going to have like a harder time from the guys who are really into Dynasty are also going to be like LOL on Wan'Dale Robinson. So. I don't see him becoming expensive. The things to like about him are that, first of all, he's an early declare wide receiver. He was very efficient in college in terms of yards per route run. He broke out. He cleared a 30% dominator rating. He had a 35% career market share of yards, which is really, really strong. I mean, I've been going on and on about Treylon Burks and how, productive he was over the course of his career. 36% for Burks. Wan'Dale Robinson kind of has everything that we're looking for in terms of the production profile stuff, except he bombed the combine. And part of that bombing the combine was him being 5'8" and change and 178 pounds. And he's got, a career ADOT of 7.8. He's like a little gadget guy. He's probably going to play in the slot, or be kind of like a Tavon Austin-y type thing. So it's not like a high ceiling type of player archetype. And therefore, I think it makes sense to discount, the production profile, because you're not really getting this isn't a guy who's playing on the outside with this production profile. It's kind of a lower ceiling archetype with the production profile. But, there's slot receivers that are pretty good for fantasy. And it does feel like he's almost going to get treated like Tutu Atwell did, where people are just like almost at no price. I'm not really interested. And he's 178 pounds, not 155 pounds or whatever. I think there is a big difference between him and Tutu. If in a super flex leagues, if he's going to be in the late second round, I think it's a really, really nice value.
Looking beyond the Dynasty League angle with this rookie class, Denny, which first-year player do you think will have the biggest redraft impact in 2022? So it's easy to get lost in the Dynasty talk, who has the most career ceiling in this class, but just who do you think is going to hit the ground running off the bat in 2022?
I mean, it would seem to be Breece Hall, right? I don't want to. I want to say Burks, but if Burks had landed in a different, more balanced, even pass heavy offense, maybe I'd say Burks. But I think you have to say Hall. I think you have to say that the fact that they spent that much draft capital this year, it makes us believe that they don't see Michael Carter as a legit guy, even a two down back, not forget the 3 down role. And that they would like like we talked earlier, and I think there's some agreement here that they would like to run an offense, a run-based, conservative, slow-paced offense. That's great. That's great for Breece Hall. It stinks for otherwise, but it could be really good for his volume. And he has the production profile where you have to think that he could do a lot with that many touches.
It's bad for the country, but good for Breece Hall. That's what you're saying.
Yes.
Kyle or Kerrane, you go.
Well, I actually think that both Burks and London have the potential to hit the ground running if they're good, right? Like because the articles I did last year.
That's bad news for Drake London.
It's the articles that I did last year on rookie production really showed that like basically none of these rookies, like even the ones that you would expect to get like a ton of routes right away, they all have lower routes than you would think. And I think it comes down to like, okay, if you're Devontae Smith and you're coming into a situation last year where like you're clearly going to be the number one guy. We knew he was going to be the number one guy, and he was. The team stops passing a ton. They're like, this isn't working. We're using a rookie wide receiver as our number one guy. We're going to go run heavier than we otherwise might, right? And in other situations, the rookie has to kind of earn their way onto the field a bit more on more pass-heavy teams. It's just very rare where you see the combination of a team that's passing a lot and the rookie's like the number one guy. But efficiency is kind of what leads these rookies to have really productive seasons. So I actually think Burks, is in a really good spot actually for efficiency because they're going to run a bunch of 2 wide receiver sets as they always have done. And he's basically in a position to take over a lot of the A.J. Brown role when A.J. Brown has been off the charts in efficiency. So if Treylon Burks is good, I think he can be very efficient right away. And from kind of what we're looking for in terms of rookie production, he can pretty easily clear that bar. And I feel the same way about Drake London, where, they're going to, Russell Gage, like if you take Russell Gage target share and you give it to Drake London, like that's pretty sweet for a rookie, especially if he's able to add efficiency in terms of yards after catch, getting used on some screen passes, and the contested catch stuff downfield.
Yeah, Kerrane, you make such an important point there that we just see time and again that opportunity is just never enough in and of itself with the rookies, where every year we're like, well, the Cowboys have no choice but to give 130 targets to Michael Gallup. That was a big one a few years ago. And just like, it doesn't matter if they're not efficient. And like, then eventually too, if they're not efficient, the opportunity declines. And so it's something that's like, you can something you can take under consideration, but you just cannot lean on that as like the cure all. Like, they have no choice because actually they do have a choice.
They can run the ball. Like they're not just going to be like, it's similar for Washington, right? Where it's like Terry McLaurin was able to power through terrible quarterback play, but it got to the Taylor Heineke level and they're like, we're just not going to pass anymore.
Yeah. Kyle, do you have any 2022 thoughts on these guys? Like someone you expect to be a big part of the 2022 season, or just a different player, or just echoing thoughts than anyone we've talked about so far?
Yeah, Breece Hall is like the obvious one. I think he easily deserves to be the highest redraft drafted of all the rookies. But I actually think the landing spot for Treylon Burks isn't really that bad, given the massive void of targets they have, losing whatever games we saw from Julio Jones, more importantly, A.J. Brown. And although, yes, they do run a lot, the portion of the pie matters. And the portion of the pie that is available is unreal. And unlike, a team like, Washington or the Jets, Ryan Tannehill is good. He's not good, but he has been hyper efficient, especially not last year when he was throwing to Chester Rogers as his top receiver. But the 2 years before that, he was one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the league. And it helped that he was schemed perfectly, where you could draw defenses in with an efficient running game and then just take sick deep play action shots. But it worked well for him. And when they have a top receiver, if Treylon Burks is that guy, which is kind of always the caveat, you still have to be good. You just don't get free targets for nothing unless you're Kelvin Benjamin. But if Treylon Burks is good, he will play enough of that A.J. Brown role. Not all of it. You don't get to replace A.J. Brown 1-for-1, but he will have enough of that physical athletic build that he does do some of the stuff we love about the Titans offense well. So although, Titans, I'd like you to throw a little bit more, especially with, one of my favorite receivers, Treylon Burks, in the fold. There's so much volume up for grabs there, and it's relatively efficient compared to a team like Detroit, the Jets, whatever, that Treylon Burks should, to me, be very clearly the second highest rookie in redraft.
Just please Treylon be good, because we got a lot riding on it. And when I see Treylon Burks, man, I just see Darren McFadden who can actually go side to side. That's what I see with Treylon Burks. So the Zoomers, look it up if you don't know who Darren McFadden is. We're near the end of the show here, but We haven't talked about quarterbacks at all. We haven't talked about tight ends at all. Is anyone in this group excited about any of these quarterbacks, either from like a rookie redraft perspective or a long-term perspective, or do we just agree with the NFL's assessment with where they drafted these guys that it is just a horrible quarterback class?
I kind of think Matt Corral, especially when you look at like what we want to get from, these day 2 or even later for some other players, rookies, like I don't think Matt Corral is going to step in and be an elite player, but the fact that he plays on a team that actually has like not a completely terrible offensive line, they're not great, but they at least have like decent tackle play, and they have really good receivers as far as some of these bad teams go. Getting DJ Moore as your number 1, Robbie Anderson, not bad as number 2 either. Like, it's a spot that is not doomed to failure like Justin Fields is. So if he's good, he should be able to win that job relatively quickly, because Sam Darnold is bad, and he's been bad every single snap we've ever seen him almost since joining the NFL. And Matt Rule saw that last year. And although they didn't have the capital, the cash to move around and take, an elite stab on a quarterback, but we knew they needed a quarterback, and they at least tried to address it. And when they're 0-3 and Sam Darnold is playing bad, we're not going to see the 4th or the 5th week of Sam Darnold. So especially more of like that super flex type, I think people discount him really specifically because of the draft capital, but he's a solid quarterback prospect. I think, especially when you look at like his sneaky athleticism, he had like well over, I think, 1,000 rushing yards over his final 2 seasons, double-digit touchdowns on the ground in his final season as well, I believe. Like, that will give you some like solid fantasy weeks, especially in Superflex if he's your second quarterback, for pretty cheap in like Superflex dynasty drafts or even Superflex redraft drafts.
Yeah, I thought Matt Corral was like the faster and smoother version of Kenny Pickett. I really don't understand how Kenny Pickett ended up like consensus ahead of Matt Corral in the NFL's eyes. But
I think it seems like he slipped a bit due to, like mental health stuff, right? Like teams were really discounting him due to that. And in my mind, I mean, I don't know a ton about the situation, but I'm totally down to bet on Matt Corral. And so, if he emerges and beats out Sam Darnold as I expect him to, I like him more than Kenny Pickett in a starting role. So I totally agree with Kyle. I think Matt Corral is a really strong bet. And to me, a cut above Desmond Ridder and maybe like a cut and a half above Sam Howell, who I really like as a prospect, but the NFL does not like him, clearly. And he's at the type of situation where like he could play, 5 games this year, let's say, and look pretty good. And then they draft a quarterback in the early first round next year. Like this draft capital, it's like he has to be outstanding to even get a shot in 2023 or at any point almost. So I think Corral's a cut above. And then Malik Willis. I mean, like if you told me that we were going to get a year of Tyler Huntley starting for a team within the next like 2 to 3 years, I'd probably spend like a late first round Superflex pick on that. like I don't care if Malik Willis is good. I just want him on the field for like 16 games at some point in the next couple of years. And I think we're going to get that. I think, before the end of like 2024, we'll be up to like 12 plus games of Malik Willis. His skill set's so perfect for fantasy. It's not just the rushing. It's that he throws deep. He connects. He has a beautiful deep ball at times. I know he's not like the most consistent guy, but he's going to hit big splash plays downfield, and he's going to run around, and he's going to rush for touchdowns. So still want Malik Willis, and I think around kind of the 110, 111 range in Superflex drafts. Yeah. I'm starting to want to draft him.
And Malik fell, but he like stayed within range. He was a top 90 pick, and top 90 quarterbacks typically get a chance at some point. They aren't usually ones who are consigned to like the never playing bin for their career. Like he'll get a shot at some point.
The Titans strike me as the kind of team that won't try to shoehorn him into a certain system, that they will like go with the flow, like the Ravens did with Lamar Jackson when they benched Joe Flacco, and they were like, well, we're doing a whole new offense now, completely different. I could see the Titans doing the same. I think that the Vrabel and them are savvy enough to do that, and that's great for Willis's fantasy prospects.
Yeah, and Denny, the Titans are, despite having like a retrograde reputation on offense because they love to run the ball, they're like pretty aggressive, at least in terms of like, they'll like move on from someone quickly. Yeah, like if they think like Ryan Tannehill like has officially run its course, like they're not gonna like belabor the point with Ryan Tannehill if he's not playing great football, even in 2022. So I think like you could count on the Titans to like when it's time, they're not going to wait any longer than they should. When it's time, they're going to give Malik Willis a
Yeah,
shot.
if Tannehill looks the way he did in the postseason last year for an extended period this season, I think we're going to hear a lot about Willis from both the local media and national football media.
Kerrane, are any of these tight ends worth getting excited about? It's a very, very low wattage tight end year. Is there any names we need to really know in Dynasty, or any names we need to know for 2022 redraft?
Yeah, I think McBride landed in a decent spot for his long-term value. We know that the Cardinals will use a tight end. Zach Ertz revived his career there. So I don't think for redraft Trey McBride's going to be that interesting, but this was a pretty good spot for him. And the second round draft capital was nice. This was a class where we thought maybe there wouldn't be like a clear, tight end that the NFL favored, and it might just be a bunch of third round guys. So for him to go in the second round, be the only guy to go in the second round, had me bump him above Greg Dulcich, where I had Dulcich ranked ahead of him pre-draft. But Dulcich does still interest me. I think he's in a decent situation as well. And he'll have good quarterback play. Yeah, Denver Broncos. And, you talked to Thor, we did a spaces after day 2 of the draft. And he's basically like, Albert O, he's done. Greg Dulcich is just coming for him. And the way I view it is, they might want to play, maybe they want to play like some power play action football stuff with 2 tight end sets, right? And Dulcich is a classic move tight end. So in that scenario, he's Mark Andrews and Albert O is kind of Hayden Hurst. And they're going to be using Dulcich as kind of a Mike Gesicki, big receiver type. And his receiving skills are really strong. So I really like him still. He gets the third round draft capital. He can totally emerge from that. He's tied to Russell Wilson long term. I think both those guys make sense to prioritize a bit in your rookie drafts. Not super psyched for them in redraft, but rookie tight ends rarely do much.
With the Broncos and Dulcich too, I think it's acknowledgement. Like Alberto you can't count on him for 17 games. Like it's just never been his pedigree in the NFL or even in college. Like maybe it's been bad luck, but he's not been a guy who's made it through a season without getting injured. So the Broncos, I don't know if it's necessarily a lack of faith in Alberto's ability, but maybe it's like a hedge against his durability. And we kind of had a freewheeling conversation here. Does anyone have any thoughts they wanted to get in but didn't get in, or are we good?
Okay. How excited are we about Rashad Bateman? Are you guys excited? Because I'm excited.
That name didn't come
doing
up.
This again?
What do you mean doing this again? Don't doing this again. This nonsense with me. He was hurt. He didn't play. He didn't get any practice reps in the summer because he had, I think it was like a groin thing. And he comes into an offense he hasn't played. Yada yada. I don't care. I'm mostly throwing away the rookie season. But that's also because I thought he was a really good prospect. And if I didn't think he was good, I would be like, didn't play well his rookie season. He's not going to do anything. Yeah. But I'm going to write him a pass because he was incredible in college. Just, the perfect analytical darling prospect, right? The breakout age, the dominator stuff, the history of production. Looked great. Now they have an offense completely vacant of any wide receiver talent that isn't him. You can throw Mark Andrews in there, a very good pass catcher, although not listed as a wide receiver. But yes, I will. This is a bag I'll be pumping.
I will say, go ahead, Pat.
I just want to make the point that they were, if we're talking about what teams are telling us, they traded Marquise Brown day 1. They could have easily gotten more wide receiver help. They got a bunch of tight end help instead.
I have to say on the flip side of that, I am maybe too excited, weirdly, into Marquise Brown in the Cardinals offense. He enters the Cardinals offense with a declining DeAndre Hopkins, who skated by on insane touchdown production last year. He's a big receiver. He's never been one to dominate opponents. He wins with a very nuanced sort of sideline grabs that make you jump out of your seat. But it strikes me as a situation where Hopkins will be drafted as the wide receiver 1 in Arizona. I don't know if that's how things will fall, though. I think Brown has a decent chance to usurp him as the wide receiver 1 there.
What you're dealing with Hopkins is that's the thing. He's he had to physically dominate, but he didn't blow by them. He had to use his body to win hand fights, and those players tend to age kind of poorly. And
exactly,
Marquise Brown is something the Cardinals have not been able to settle on their deep threat, the entire Cliff Kyler Murray era.
And also Kyler is a great deep ball thrower, extremely productive, one of the highest EPAs on 30+ yard throws in the past 2 years. It fits really well for Marquise Brown.
So say, you guys okay? You made it through the entire pod without talking about Sky Moore.
I want to talk Sky Moore. I was waiting, Denny, for you to bring up the shower narrative, the college shower narrative.
I thought we had 30 minutes.
Yeah.
I thought we had 30 minutes on Monday, all blocked off for Sky Moore.
So Juju I had down as a loser here, which is my covert way of trying to talk about Sky Moore, because like the question that I keep thinking about with the Chiefs is how do they deploy these guys? Because Juju, I mean, if Juju has to go to the outside for like half of his snaps so that Sky Moore can come inside, that's bad for Juju. I mean, he's not been anything but a slot receiver basically his entire career. I think that, on the other hand, I think it's pretty interesting for Sky Moore that like he's not going to take 100% of his snaps in the slot. That would be super weird. He's going to get a chance to play on the outside as well, which I think is awesome for him. So Sky Moore's a winner, Juju's a loser.
There you have it, folks. The final word on this 2022 rookie class. And the veterans, they are usurping. Really great stuff. Just great stuff on the site all draft week. A lot still relevant. Go check out all of our blurbs. We have a profile on all 262 draft picks. We're going to be getting a lot of Dynasty League content from Pat. A lot of stuff every day from Denny. I've been telling Denny, like, Denny just writes every day.
Every day.
Kyle's been writing every day too. Denny just writes every single day.
So I have two coming up next week, just to put it out there. I have one on a veteran winners and losers. Maybe I will repeat some of what has been said today, and then I have a piece on the best deep ball throwers over the past couple years and how that might affect receivers in 2022.
Awesome stuff. So keep it locked to the site. Look out for all of our articles we got coming. Check out everything we've already posted. Got more podcasts coming this week. So for Patrick Kerrane, for Denny Carter, for Kyle Dvorchak, I am Patrick Daugherty. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you later this week.